There have now been 2 adaptations of the Dark Phoenix Saga in the movies. Let's see which one did it the best, or rather, which one did it least worst.
Just because everybody hates it doesn't mean it's not good.
In The Last Stand, we have a lot of characters that could qualify, but to simplify things, I'll stick to the ones that are most active throughout the entire movie. This leaves Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Halle Berry as Storm, and Kelsey Grammer as Beast. Storm has the clearest arc of the bunch. That is partially because Halle Berry wanted to leave the series when she was given her own superhero vehicle. She returned when that vehicle ended up being Catwoman, but under the agreement that her role be greatly expanded. Those types of contracts can mean hell for writers, but here it actually works well. Berry proves to be a strong Storm and one of the bright points of this movie. It's just unfortunate that her best performance in the role by far is buried in the worst movie to have her in the role. Anyway, she has to take the reins of leadership after both Cyclops and Professor X die. The arc is set up here.
I thought that perhaps you might take my place someday.
And we see her take to the role quickly, yet not unnaturally.
I was told that this was a safe place for mutants.
It was, son.
And it still is. We'll find you a room. Hank, tell all the students the school stays open.
In a movie filled with faulty parts, Storm's part actually works well. Then we have Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, who really doesn't have an arc here. He's largely just there and occasionally says a piece here or there.
Hey, I'm just a sub. You got a problem, talk to Scott.
But has nothing going on with him specifically. Still, Hugh Jackman is great as he always is in the role, and it's never a down point to have him on screen. And finally, we have Beast. Kelsey Grammer was a great casting choice for the role, and he really fits it incredibly well. It's a shame this will be his only time in the role with significant screen time. His story is easy to miss out and not very well shown. He starts as the President's Secretary of Mutant Affairs, a job he quits when he learns the mutant cure is weaponized.
You think resigning is going to make a difference?
Policy is being made without me, Mr. President. The decision to turn the cure into a weapon was made without me. What happened on that convoy was inexcusable.
This caused him to go back to the X-Men, which he worked with earlier. It's just not established what his previous association was. We know now he was a founding member, but in 2006, we didn't know that. So, rather shocking, Storm is the strongest of our main heroes, although Beast and Wolverine are never weak on screen, as all the actors give their all. In Dark Phoenix, we have James McAvoy as Professor X, Sophie Turner as Jean Grey, and Nicholas Hoult as Beast. We see that the school has become accepted by the public since the last movie. Professor X even has a direct line to the president in his office. Not remotely sure how this happened since the last movie. Apocalypse and his mutants did a massive mass murder event. It would actually make more sense for this result after Days of Future Past, which is still a stretch, but at least the X-Men will have been given power after mutants did good things instead of bad. Anyways, Professor X likes his access to the president and likes his team going and saving people in his name. It's part of this overconfidence storyline that also spills into what he did with Jean. When Jean Grey was young, she accidentally used her powers and created a car wreck, killing her parents. At least that's what she thought. It turns out her father survived, but was scared of her and wanted her gone.
Then you'll take her.
Yes. I can help her in ways that you can't.
She can't be helped. She's a lost cause.
Professor X adopted her and edited her memory, making her think her father had died. She also gets a weird alien smoky thing that goes into her that is apparently some sort of force that takes away the mental edits Xavier made. This throws her on a road separate from Xavier. She also attacks some police officers and kills Mystique.
Whoopsie doodle.
which puts both Beast and Magneto on a path of wanting to kill her, which seems extreme for Beast. He's never seemed like the bloodless sort of character at all before this. She has to choose whether or not she will let these things control her or whether she will control them, which would be more effective if we explored her motivations. As is, she just does bad stuff, talks to aliens, and decides to be good. Beast has a story very similar to Storm's in X-Men Last Stand, except there's no indication that he will take command in the end. Throughout the movie, we see Xavier's in charge with Mystique as the field commander. Beast is there, but he's not taking charge. Closest he comes to that is when he confronts Xavier about Mystique's death.
I think I promised her a better life. And then you took it from her.
You messed with the mind of an 8-year-old girl. You pushed down all that pain and anger. Where do you think it's gonna go?
I did that to help her. What I do
oh,
to
please,
help
come on,
all
please.
of
You still can't see what you did wrong?
It's weird how we see Mystique's death affect Beast and Magneto, but the only real effect we see it have on Xavier is he uses it to try to score a sympathy point in an argument with Beast.
I really hope you feel better, Hank. I hope that railing on me 5 minutes after I put my foster sister in the grave has made you feel
This isn't about me.
Then at the end, Xavier steps down with no warning or indication that he plans to or should. Beast takes over, and that's that. There is potentially good stuff in Dark Phoenix with these characters, but it's too muddled. The script really could have used some refining. The same is true for The Last Stand, but the characters are much clearer in their reasons for doing things. In this instance, less is more. The Last Stand gets the point.
I thought you were a diplomat.
As Churchill said, there comes a time when all men must... Oh, you get the point!
Dark Phoenix has Jessica Chastain as shape-shifting alien lady. I'm certain she has a name, but I don't care to look it up. She comes from an alien race of shapeshifters that are not the Skrull. If you're wondering, they asked to use the Skrulls and Marvel Disney said no. The Phoenix Force destroyed her race, and now she wants to use the Phoenix Force to rebuild her race on Earth. We see clearly how it could wipe out an alien race, but we see nothing close to it being able to rebuild a race. Here, the Phoenix Force seems to just be a souped-up version of Jean's already existent powers. She doesn't really do a whole lot except some killing. Honestly, these alien villains seem like such an afterthought in this movie. The Last Stand has Ian McKellen as Magneto. Again, with Dark Phoenix being a presence, you'd think they would make her the main villain. She is only one of the most powerful beings the X-Men have ever had to contend with. But sure, let's do Magneto again. To make it worse, this movie has a simplified version of Magneto. He abandons Mystique because she's no longer a mutant.
I'm sorry, my dear. You're not one of us anymore.
Alright, we haven't seen this side of Magneto. It's pretty dark, but then he watches his best friend get murdered, and rather than mourn the loss, he decides to embrace his friend's killer.
Oh, Jean! Jean!
My dear, come with me.
We just get this quick line about to show he's sort of cared.
Charles Xavier did more for mutants than you'll ever know. My single greatest regret is that he had to die for our dream to live.
So maybe he just cares about the mutants that side with him. There's a certain logic there. In battle, you can't get too concerned about the other side. Then we get this bit.
In chess, the pawns go first.
So he doesn't care about humans, doesn't care about his best friend, doesn't care about the mutants that fight with him. What does he care about? He's one of the best, most complex villains from the Marvel Universe, yet this movie breaks him down to just being the bad guy that does bad things. I guess he cares about stopping the cure, but why? We know that apparently cannot be made without this certain mutant, but honestly, that's weird they can't make it anymore without him, and Magneto has no way of knowing this, and just assumes it. Essentially, it's a plot convenience in the writing, and Magneto just assumes the writing will be that way and plans his final strike with that idea in mind. Both Magneto and shape-shifting alien lady are supposed to be manipulating Jean towards the dark side, but they just give her speeches after she's already done evil stuff and is pretty much already on the dark side. Neither seems like they're very effective. Both these villains suck. One is just forgettable, and one is a simplified version of a once great character, and only one feels like a key piece in the story. Between the two, the point has to go to The Last Stand.
I'm one of them.
Action-wise, both movies have their highlights. Seeing Iceman take his more classic form is cool, as well as seeing the fastball special. The action is more of a mixed bag in Dark Phoenix, with most of it being unmemorable. The bit on the street is alright, and the final battle on the train is fairly cool. Overall, I was more invested in the final battle in The Last Stand because I was more engaged with the characters. But in a vacuum, the train sequence is probably the best action in both movies. The question is that enough to win? When both movies end up being rather meh, the answer ends up being yes. Point for Dark Phoenix.
You're always sorry, Charles. And there's always a speech. But nobody cares anymore.
Simon Kinberg is a first-time director, and it really shows here. His visual style ranges from non-existent to completely nowhere. Beast looks worse here than any other movie besides First Class. And obviously Holt didn't want to be in makeup because when the character is knocked out here, he reverts to human form, which makes no sense. Story-wise, he suppresses Beast to look human, not vice versa. Mystique looks worse here than any other movie, period. She obviously wants out of the makeup too. When we see her take a human look for no reason, when we know her character makes a big deal about not hiding being a mutant.
What's the matter, baby? You don't think I look pretty like this?
The new X-Men uniforms look like they were bought from a Halloween shop. Why not just use the uniforms from the end of Apocalypse? There's this clear, unfinished special effect. There's this super goofy scene that's clearly supposed to be horrifying, but ends up just looking like James McAvoy doing a goofy walk.
Please, Jake.
The movie has a very small feel, which could be good, but when the story you're telling is the Dark Phoenix Saga, and it feels small, something has gone wrong. This, in many ways, should be the equivalent of the X-Men's Infinity Saga, but it feels less like a major event and just barely more than a day in the life. Brett Ratner is no visual genius either. His style does not exist. However, there are some cool visual ideas in The Last Stand. The moving of the Golden Gate Bridge, the makeup for Beast looks amazing, and is probably the best it's looked in the franchise. Overall, the visuals in Dark Phoenix are filled with blunders, while The Last Stand, even though it doesn't have a strong visual style, does have moments. Point for The Last Stand.
Charles always wanted to build bridges.
Both movies have great scores. John Powell does a great job on The Last Stand with a really memorable theme. However, the score sometimes goes a bit overdramatic.
Oh, my stars and garters.
Go into stealth mode.
Dark Phoenix has a score by Hans Zimmer. I've been accused of being a Zimmer fanboy, and just that raw accusation makes me want to go against him here just to prove those people wrong. But Zimmer has the perfect balance of his dramatic music without going too overblown, unlike Powell, who seems to go overblown as a stylistic choice. The two scores are solid, but I have to go with Dark Phoenix here. Normally, I look at sound design, but neither movie really does anything creative on that front, meaning it all comes to the music and giving Dark Phoenix the point. The Last Stand has Famke Janssen as Jean Grey, Patrick Stewart as Professor X, Shawn Ashmore as Iceman, Ellen Page as Shadowcat, Anna Paquin as Rogue, and Ben Foster as Angel. The first big thing to get out of the way, this movie is supposed to, at least in part, be an adaptation of the Dark Phoenix Saga, yet Jean Grey is merely a supporting character. That is all types of wrong. Anyways, Iceman, Shadowcat, and Colossus all get to grow a bit as they are elevated from students to full-fledged team members. Their growth to that status feels fairly natural too. Xavier is terribly mishandled though. He is a complete jerk to Wolverine throughout this movie. I guess because Wolverine questioned him messing with Jean Grey's mind.
What have you done?
I think she killed Scott.
That's not possible.
I warned you.
Rogue is mishandled as well. She has a lot of reasons to be tempted by the cure, yet they exclusively focus on her watching Iceman and Shadowcat from afar, making it seem like she wants it just to be with her boyfriend. Angel is weird. He clearly has a mixed relationship with his dad, who developed the cure. He refuses to take it and runs away to be with the X-Men, only to not be seen again until the very end to save his dad's life. Jean Grey is reduced to a fairly generic villain that kills for the sake of killing without any clear motivation. Perhaps an anger at Xavier for tampering with her mind? But after his death, what is there? She does get a good death scene, though.
You would die for them.
No, not for them. For you. For you.
Save me.
In Dark Phoenix, we have Michael Fassbender as Magneto, Ty Sheridan as Cyclops, Cody Smith-McPhee as Nightcrawler, Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique, and Alexandria Shipp as Storm. None of these characters really has much to do. Really, most of the work goes to Mystique, who is very critical of Charles and thinks she and Beast should leave the team. And then she dies. And if you thought Jennifer Lawrence gave a half-assed performance in Apocalypse, you haven't seen anything yet. She is so far beyond checked out of this franchise. All she emotes in this movie is boredom.
It's funny. I can't actually remember the last time you were the one risking something.
Magneto apparently got a mutant reservation after his mass murder instead of prison time. I assume it's this movie's simplified version of Genosha. He seems largely interested in keeping out the outside world's business until Jean shows up, and he discovers that she killed Mystique and decides to try to kill Jean. On a side note, how did Jean get blood on her shirt when she didn't have it after killing Mystique?
Whose blood is that?
I see nothing. I know nothing.
Anyways, this movie almost has a theme about bloodlust, because Nightcrawler gets fairly insane during the final fight, seeming to take pleasure in killing the aliens, and meanwhile, Storm and Cyclops are there. Cyclops gets this movie's one F-bomb.
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
While Storm makes ice cubes.
Rocks?
That's their big contributions. Cyclops is even dating Jean, which in the end seems to mean nothing of significance. This is very close, not because both supporting casts are so good, but they are all mixed between meh and bad. Dark Phoenix is consistent with its characters either being non-significant or just bizarre, while The Last Stand does alright by some and not so well by others. It's close, but I have to go with The Last Stand simply because they all kind of seem like characters at times. Dark Phoenix's characters get illogical, which speaks to weaknesses in the writing. Having characters do things because they need to be done for a cool scene, rather than because it's something the character may do. The Last Stand is guilty of this too, just Dark Phoenix does it with almost everyone. Point for The Last Stand.
Save me.
I love you.
There's a huge problem with both these movies, since they want to do the Dark Phoenix Saga. So, in the comic book, Jean Grey got the Phoenix Force from space and became super powerful and was pretty awesome until the Hellfire Club got a hold of her. If they sound familiar, it's because they were the main villains in X-Men First Class. Sebastian Shaw and White Queen psychically manipulate Jean to use the Phoenix Force for their own means. It backfires when she becomes Dark Phoenix. She is stopped by the X-Men temporarily with a device that Beast made that, once applied to Jean's head, would allow Professor X enough power to suppress the Phoenix Force. Sadly, they couldn't get it to Jean before she used her power to destroy a whole planet filled with sentient life. This causes the Shi'ar to track her down, forcing the X-Men to fight for her. When the X-Men start dying for her, Jean realizes this is wrong, and that her ability to suppress the Dark Phoenix will not last, and gives her life with her final act being to restore to life her dead friends. Now, it would be fairly easy to cut out the Shi'ar bit and make this movie about villains manipulating the Phoenix Force till she goes mad, and the X-Men having to save her. This actually doesn't seem like it'd be terribly hard to adapt. Jean suddenly stumbles upon something that enhances her powers, but she is kidnapped and manipulated into madness. Have her accidentally kill her friends, and that act gives her a moment of clarity where she sacrifices herself and restores her friends. Both movies have elements here. Both Magneto and shape-shifting alien lady are clearly supposed to be the forces pushing her down a dark path. The X-Men try to defend her, even resulting in some deaths. Somehow, that's it. The Last Stand has Dark Phoenix largely in the background while it deals with the whole Cure storyline. The Cure was introduced in Joss Whedon's run of The Astonishing X-Men and is completely underutilized in his run. The movie actually does a much better job exploring this idea. Unfortunately, it's not great with it. Rogue and Angel seem like great characters to explore this with. Angel, pressured to take the cure, but not wanting to. Rogue, wanting to take the cure, but being pressured not to. Sadly, these characters barely have more than bit parts in this movie. That brings us to Dark Phoenix. This movie is very much about the titular Phoenix, but how they go about it makes no real sense. Both movies show that Phoenix has powers that are hard for her to control. However, she isn't tempted by the villains until after she already does evil. That aspect of the psychic assault and manipulation done to her is gone. Honestly, Dark Phoenix feels more like it was based on The Last Stand's Phoenix story, just expanded. In both movies, it seems like Xavier was the one that psychically manipulated her, except he does it because he thinks it's for the best. There is potential in this story, except in The Last Stand, he is dead before he shows any doubt about his actions. In Dark Phoenix, he literally shows no regret except for leaving the school at the end, which is out of nowhere. It seems like there should be a theme about facing your issues. Professor X doesn't want to face his mistake with changing Jean's memory, and because of that, Jean is unable to properly face and cope with how her father abandoned her. There's something interesting there, but this movie doesn't focus enough on it to mean anything. Supposedly, they reshot the ending of Dark Phoenix because it was too similar to another movie, rumored to be Captain Marvel. Ironically, they end up with an ending very similar to another superhero movie.
Struggle no more, and give me all of your power.
You want this power. You're gonna get it.
You think you can live with it? Take it!
Neither movie has a very strong storyline, but overall the best story in these movies is The Cure, which is in The Last Stand. So, point for The Last Stand.
Come on!
Grow those back.
I have to ask, why is Fox so eager to ignore the Phoenix Saga and just jump right into the Dark Phoenix Saga in both movies? Not only that, why have the writer of the original movie that messed up the story come back and write and direct the next movie? Maybe he learned from his mistakes, but from the raw number of plot points he copied, he clearly did not. Neither of these movies are very bad or very good for that matter. They aren't the worst comic book movies ever, but they certainly aren't anywhere near good, which is a shame. The Dark Phoenix Saga is easily one of the best comic book arcs ever, yet somehow it's inspired 2 bad movies based on it. Weird.
Oh, no.
Whoa. I think I just figured something out, Beavis.
What?
This sucks more than anything that has ever sucked before.
They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't be.
Pain don't hurt.